Okay, so chemical bonding, that's when we have atoms coming together to form molecules and compounds. The goal, always, of a chemical bond is for atoms to get a full outer shell and become more stable. Always the goal of a chemical bond. We're going to look at 3 types of chemical bonds. 2 a whole bunch, 1 we don't do a whole lot with. Anybody tell me one type of chemical bond? Oh, first of all, I should ask you this before we talk about the types. How do atoms form bonds? What are their choices? First of all, what do they use when they form bonds? Why do things form ions? Positive or negative, Fletch? Losing or gaining electrons. So whenever there's a chemical bond, we know that the electrons are involved. What electrons are involved? Where would I find the electrons that are involved in a chemical bond? Yeah, these are the valence electrons. And what do atoms do with valence electrons when they form bonds? They have 3 choices. Share them. Yep. They can be shared, lost, or gained. To form chemical bonds. So every chemical bond is a result of either gaining, losing, or sharing electrons. Now let's see if we can come up with the 3 types. There's one kind where there's transfer. That means gained or lost. There's one kind where there's sharing. And there's one kind where they float around between each other. Can you tell me any of the 3? What's the kind where they transfer electrons? Like one's an anion, one's a cation. What do I call that kind of bonding? Ion, ion, ion. It is ionic bonding. So there's one kind. Ionic bonding, where I have transfer of electrons, and it involves cations and anions. That's the first kind we're going to talk about. This is number one. Doesn't mean it's the best, it's just the first one we're going to talk about. Anybody know the name of the one where they share electrons? It's in your vocabulary. I'm sure of it. Maybe you should look. Help me out here. Got it, Connor? Covalent. Yay, it's covalent. So the second type is covalent. We'll look at it second. This is where valence electrons are shared between atoms. Interestingly enough, these guys almost always follow a pattern when they form bonds. In ionic bonding, I have a metal plus a nonmetal. In covalent bonding, I have a nonmetal plus nonmetal. So when you look at these, I've got metal plus a nonmetal, nonmetal plus a nonmetal in covalent. There's one arrangement of metals and nonmetals that we haven't seen yet. What is it? I've got metal to nonmetal, nonmetal plus nonmetal. What would be my other choice? Good, Jacob, metal to metal. So my third kind is called metallic bonding. And this is called, we say electrons flow between metal atoms. It's called an electron sea, like the ocean. They say they flow like the ocean. And that is a metal plus a metal. So those are your three major types. We'll look at each kind. We spend a lot more time on ionic and covalent than we do on metallic. But now I should be able to write something like this. Let's try a couple of these. Pull your periodic table out if you don't have it out. I'm going to give you, let's say, what did I write down? 5 different compounds. I want you to see if you can figure out whether they're an ionic bond, a covalent bond, or a metallic bond. Okay, try those 3 by location on the periodic table, or 5 by location on the periodic table. See if you can figure out what kind of bond you're looking at. So go through, look at their location on the periodic table, separate it into what the 2 parts are, Ca and Cl2, or you can separate it this way if it helps you. Then find calcium. See, is it a metal or a nonmetal? I would say calcium's a metal. Chlorine, metal or nonmetal? Good. So I've got a metal plus a nonmetal. That tells me I've got an ionic compound. Does that make sense? Ooh, what's the next one? Is hydrogen a metal? No, hydrogen's a nonmetal. Chlorine is a nonmetal. So what does the next one have to be? Covalent. Good. Anybody not see how we're getting that? What's the next one, Claire? What'd you say? She said covalent. Fletch, what'd you say? Covalent. Cameron, what'd you say? Abby, what'd you say? Ooh, we all said the same thing. Are we right? Yeah, we're right. This is covalent. What's the next one? What'd you write down, Ayla, for the next one? Is it metallic? What do you guys think? Yeah, good. This is metallic. What's the last one? Courtney, did you do the last one? What'd you get? She got covalent. What's aluminum? Metal or non-metal? Oh, it's a metal. That's right. So what's that make it? Good. Ionic. Are we good on how that works? Okay. Let's... What time do we get out of here? Okay, let's stop. And I want to give you your test back. You can look through them, but you have to give them back.